final segment. Any questions, by the way, so far? I know it could be, in places, could be overwhelming, but I mean, right now the focus is to stay dedicated to the concepts, not really to the syntax, but to the set of things that we have. And they are. We have the pilot class. It has the constructor which does nothing, which is kind of silly, but because we're anticipating that more things will be happening in our pilot class, well, perhaps I could rearrange it this way, right? So that the aircraft can be passed to the constructor of the pilot. And then, of course, I can say, oh, I need the data attributes, and one of them will be definitely an aircraft right here, right? So this will be my data attribute, and it's also perhaps private attribute. And so this thing, again, using the this pointer, the instance of this reference variable craft will be initialized by the constructor because it will be given the pointer or the reference to the aircraft in memory. So then we have something called operate. Now I reduced its version to like no methods, and so again I need to support my design by saying, oh, okay, I decided to move these parameters right here to my constructor. Okay. So before I thought, oh, maybe operate will take it as a parameter. Now I say, oh, let's the constructor take this parameter, because the pilot needs an aircraft all the time. Okay, going back here. So this is the version of the pilot class that we have. Emergency does absolutely nothing right now, but again, we're anticipating it to be available. And so we say craft take off, then we say navigation, create a navigation, call navigation to fly the craft, using this as a pilot in case of an emergency. And then finally, when navigation returns, right, we can say craft land or something like that, right, just to demonstrate the concepts, overall concepts. Okay, so we do a number of things inside our operate. So what's left here is to go back to the main. I know you're maybe still trying to kind of follow what I do here, but you know, if you type it in, it's all in place already, because all these methods are now already part of the aircraft. In main, what I can say, pilot could have a name, right? So we can pilot equals new pilot, and it needs the particular instance of an aircraft class to be a valid object, because that's what we decided to do with this. And then what we can do is we can simply say pilot dot operate, right? Means operate this particular aircraft and go ahead and do your thing, something like that. Okay, so that's the main method. So it sort of like takes care of major players in this particular application, an aircraft and the pilot. But there is also this intermediate object which is instantiated part of the operate method, and it's called navigation. And so we create it with of course the new parameter. By the way, so far, let's try to compile this. Going to my project name and just say clean and build, so that it may show me if everything is happy so far. Let's take a look at that. Finish building, that means that there were no error messages. So everything so far looks okay. All right, so this is the design, and now I would like to go back to the navigation class and see what does it do. So when I say fly, so the autopilot parameter, which is passed to the fly method inside the navigation class, right here is invoked, and it's initialized with a craft, with an aircraft, with an instance of an aircraft. However, what it accepts right here is the interface, and therefore this particular reference to an aircraft is limited in terms of what I can do with it only to the methods declared in this interface. An interface has only 3. We know that aircraft has more methods, right? It has takeoff and land, and we can add more and more and more. However, in part of this particular interface, we only have 3, which is also reflected in our design. And look at this arrow. This arrow basically says that by design, the navigation does not have direct access to the aircraft. The navigation has only access to interface called autopilot. And that autopilot has 3 methods, and those 3 methods are, of course, implemented right here. There's no way not to ignore them anymore, because if we ignore these methods in the class that says I'm trying to implement the interface, then the compiler will fall apart and basically say, no, I cannot compile this. So once we make this promise in the interface, an interface is like almost an empty file. There is no implementation here. It's just the declaration of the 3 methods, and we say, okay, those 3 will be the definition of the this particular interface. Also notice that you can say public and abstract, but those typically are not used inside the interface because they're assumed to be the default method signature, the definition of the method. They're all public and abstract. Abstract means that the method here in this particular file has no implementation. That is indicated by the semicolon. However, implementation still has to exist, because someplace else we say class aircraft implements the autopilot interface. Implements is a keyword in Java specifically dedicated to the relationship between classes and interfaces. Because if we create an interface someplace in our application, at least one or more than one classes must implement it so that it all begins to make sense. Because you cannot have methods without implementation. Every single method someplace has to be implemented. And so there we go. We have set, set, set. 3 methods right here which implement this particular interface named autopilot. Interestingly, if we review our design, we could have avoided this. We could have not create an interface and instead have navigation go directly at the aircraft. But then we would say, well, you know what? It would be perhaps way too unsafe to expose the entire aircraft class to the navigation class. We just want to restrict the use of aircraft by the navigation only to these 3 methods. These are all essential ideas that we're trying to maintain and produce in our design. All right, so let's save this and take a break. After the break, we can maybe go and try to examine another sample that we have.